Got any thoughts on that one personally, Adriel?
I've never experienced it.
No, neither have I. So I think what I want to talk about first is I heard this guy, he was starting his message. He was on Instagram. I did not finish the message. I don't know the totality of what he said, but he started it with, I'm in a waiting season in my life, and he was trying to draw the audience in. Are you all in a waiting season? And of course, that roused the audience with fervor. I don't know. It's very easy to get a group of church people to get stirred up about some catchphrase, and he was doing that about a waiting period in his life. I guess a lot of people feel like they're in waiting seasons, that the Lord has them waiting. Anyway, and that brought up something that we have experienced, I've experienced, and it was not a waiting season. People, I feel, are often just confused by what is happening. They call it a waiting season because they don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. They just know it's that time between the moment when they started believing God for something and they haven't received it. Something is or isn't. They don't know if something is or isn't happening in the spirit. There's a lot of stuff going on. They're not getting the results they were looking for. And they're like, oh, he's got me waiting. There's just a lot of reasons, or that they begin to think that they're in a waiting season.
Well, I mean, it's my initial thought is like, aren't we all always in a waiting season until Jesus returns? I mean, that's kind of like there's that level of waiting season, and then there's what you described, which is the waiting season of like, here's what I'm expecting the Lord to do next in my life,
But then that's my next statement is like Hebrews. That's immediately what I thought when I heard him.
Right.
I thought of Hebrews 11 where it says we're obtaining promises. And then when we get this one obtained, we move on to the next one. We just move on to the next one.
Yeah, exactly.
We're making breakthroughs. We're making breakthroughs in faith. We're obtaining things by faith. We're accomplishing things for the Lord by faith. So isn't there always a period of some part of our life where we're waiting, where we're planting the harvest and we're waiting for the harvest to come in?
Right. So saying it, I mean,
it just seems like such a nice catchphrase
that like always applies to everyone at all times.
It's very generic.
Yeah.
It's very, very generic, applies to all. And again, I didn't listen to the message, but I know sometimes it's just a way of getting up there. I wish I saw more transparency in their speech. I wish they'd just get up and say, you know what? I've been kind of getting tired of the waiting. I've been waiting on this thing, and I'm kind of tired of it right now, so I'm really feeling it. I'm really feeling the wait.
That may be what they're feeling.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so right. So they bring up the wait, but when you say the waiting season, I'm like, yeah, doesn't that exist in everyone's life? And to some degree, you're waiting on the fruition of the promise of God in your life in some place, some way, somewhere, somehow. Right. Well, then there's this other thing that the Lord has brought to my attention, is that sometimes he places you in a holding pattern until you realize some things necessary to his plans for you. Got any thoughts on that one personally, Adriel?
Well, he does do that. I've never experienced it.
No, neither have I.
No, of course I've experienced it. Yeah, I mean,
I think that's true for a lot of single people who are like, I'm believing God. I want, him to bring me my spouse.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it in
and
that
they're
context,
like, it's taking forever. What's happening?
Yeah.
And my counsel to them would be like, it's possible that you're in a holding pattern until you realize some things necessary to his plan.
Yeah, that's true. Especially, I think that happens a lot when you ask the Lord for something and he agrees.
Yeah.
And then he preps you to actually have it and receive it and hold on to it. I mean, if he just released it immediately, and you're not. It's the church loves to talk about like building the character in you, which is like, yeah, I guess that's the right language, but it's also overused. I think it's more like without it, you wouldn't really be able to hold on to it if he gave it to you.
Mm-hmm.
So he puts you in a holding pattern to prep you to, so you start learning, so you start seeing what it is that it requires to hold on to it when he gives it to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's also some revelations that come with certain plans.
Yeah.
That you're going to need some revelation surrounding that plan before he can enact it. And so he places you in a holding pattern. Sometimes people are stubborn and set, and they've got to work through the Lord is working with them, and he's working through some of that thinking, working through some of those tendencies in them before he enacts the plan. So he has them in a holding pattern.
Well, you got to be careful too, because the Israelites, when he put them in a holding pattern, walking around the mountain, I mean,
It
40
lasted
years,
40 years.
basically was just kind of waiting for some of them to pass on. So we could bring up another generation that believe him, that would believe what he told them.
Yes. Who were ready for the promised land.
Yeah.
Because it was going to require a certain aptitude, a certain character, a certain mentality, a faith-filled mentality.
Yeah.
It would have been almost impossible for the Israelites, the first generation, to enter the promised land and see what they did encounter. They encountered Jericho almost immediately, giants. They all sorts of Philistines and Macolites and all kinds of them. And it took us a real different group of people with a different mentality to settle there and to take it as their own. And so the Lord was right. He was kind of waiting because they were very, very sad and would not come round.
Some of them had gotten stuck in the mentality of slavery.
Yeah.
You know.
They moaned and complained and murmured and grumbled and they were very difficult to lead.
Yeah.
Moses had quite a challenge ahead of him.
Yeah, he did.
And I don't say that's particularly applicable to the body of Christ when he's got people in holding patterns. I don't know that it's because they're murmuring and complaining. He's like,
well,
but that may apply to some.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of
you
it.
just have to be careful to make sure you're not
Yeah.
staying stuck in a holding pattern because you refuse to relent on something the Lord's been trying to change your mind on.
Yeah. But I know a lot of waiting in my life has come from he had more to say on the subject.
Yeah.
I didn't have the vision as clearly as I thought I did.
Yeah.
He wanted to refine the subject. And that took time to build it into my life, my thinking, my habits in preparation for what was ahead.
Yeah.
And so a lot of time, he took some time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I know a scripture that comes to my mind is Hebrews, where it says he writes the law into our hearts now, instead of just handing down a commandment and saying you must live by this. He's working with our heart because he wants it to come easily, and where we're willing and we understand and it's birthed inside of us. So I know that he is building his plans and his way of doing things in our hearts, and that takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I hear them use the generic, "Are you in a waiting season?" I think that makes no sense to me.
Everyone everywhere would answer yes.
Yes.
For one reason or another.
Makes
Yes.
no sense to me. And I tend to think, and this might be just a bit cynical, but I tend to think, well, you're just trying to get a reaction from your audience. You're just, rather than just get up and say, I'm waiting for something in my life, particularly, and it wears on me. And I know some of you can probably relate to that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the wears, and let's talk about what do you do with the time while you're waiting.
What's the reason that he has you waiting?
There's that too.
Yeah.
It's okay to seek the Lord for that.
Yeah.
the reason that he has you waiting, which we have done individually in our lives and together many times,
Yeah.
sought the Lord one more time. Why does it seem like this is dragging out? Why is there such a waiting period? What is it, even in my character, perhaps, that you're wanting to, you're waiting for, or you're producing in me, so that I can align myself with it, so I can be real deliberate. I'm not trying to manipulate the Lord, like, oh, I've wink, wink, figured out what he wants, so I'm going to give him that response. But I can begin to come into agreement with it and work with it and really work that out in myself deliberately. Be very intentional.
Yeah.
So I know that, we've had those conversations too, like, Lord, if your work, endurance produces its Romans.
Character.
Yep.
And character produces hope.
And hope will not leave you ashamed in the Lord.
Yeah.
So if there is a character, if there is, something that you're producing or refining in me, I want to know it. And then I can, be intentional about it.
Yeah.
It isn't always even, when we think character, we obviously we think, oh, you have poor behavior.
An immaturity of some kind.
Immaturity.
Yeah.
You have some poor behavior.
Yeah.
Something that's not, not quite godly.
Right.
You're a little shady in that area of your life. Or you're a little spoiled, or you're a little presumptuous, or you're a little proud. But that isn't always the character he's talking about. There's other kinds as well.
Just like stature.
Yeah, strength. Coming into a strength, coming into absolutely.
Knowledge and wisdom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Coming into more knowledge, more wisdom. Those are maturity. That is character.
Yeah.
Some others, what are some others? Some other kinds of character that he can be building in someone. He talks about experience. It gives you, someone who has more experience is less panicked.
Yeah.
They're less stressed.
Yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, I've been dealing with this for a while. And what you find is this and this. Don't panic. Mm-hmm. Right? Experience gives you a little bit of stability. And
assurance.
He is loving enough, patient enough with us to allow us those times, those months, those years in the waiting to develop that, like to have moments of like, I throw my hands up, I don't know what to do. And he's like, well, this process is going to give you enough experience that eventually you're like, oh, I know what to do now when this happens.
Yeah.
And he doesn't, I love that about the Lord, because I'm much less patient with myself than he is. Mm-hmm. He'll be like, well, just keep going. You're going to get it. Keep going. You'll get it.
Yeah.
I know you're wanting to throw your hands up now. Just do it again and again and again, because patience brings about this, experience brings about this patience.
Yeah.
Until you're like, and then you have a strength in that area of your life. You're like, well, I kind of know the different ways, and I'm not as baffled or perplexed by it.
Yep.
Right. So there's different types of character that he can be building through endurance, and then it brings you hope. And and I like to hang on to the fact that hope in the Lord will not leave you ashamed. Mm-hmm. Hope won't leave you ashamed. Right. So that was one thing that I really pounced on when I heard it, which was sometimes first of all, everybody's waiting in some way. And then sometimes it's just a holding pattern. Mm-hmm. And it's a deliberate holding pattern. And I want to know, I'm going to ask the question why and work in agreement with it.
Yeah.
And then move forward from there.